Grains and oilseeds enjoy a place of dietary and cultural prominence throughout the world. Whether eaten directly or processed into products like flour, baked goods, tortillas and pasta, they are an important and affordable part of a healthy and balanced diet. Grains and oilseeds are also fed to livestock and can be used for a variety of other purposes. Different kinds of grain are grown all over the world throughout the year, and more than 1 million tons of grain need to be moved internationally each day. Accomplishing this task requires a complex global supply chain, connecting farmers to transporters, importers, manufacturers and consumers. The supply chain works together to ensure safety, affordability and predictable delivery. During the journey between a farmer's field and an importer, for example, a food manufacturer, grain is transported in trucks, rail cars and ocean vessels. Throughout this process, grain is collected in larger and larger quantities. For instance, a vessel might hold the equivalent of 400 train cars or 2,000 trucks. If vessel deliveries are disrupted, the costs to the system can be high, even resulting in supply shortages. One factor that can disrupt the global grain trading system is low-level presence, or LLP, of genetically modified organisms, commonly referred to as GMOs. LLP means there are small amounts of a specific GMO in shipments of grain coming into countries that have not yet approved that particular GMO for use as food or feed, even though it has already been approved in the country of export. While every effort is made by each participant in the value chain to minimize occurrences of LLP, the process of growing, harvesting and shipping grain is so large and complex that LLP can never be fully avoided. Let's consider an example, say a new GMO, a drought-tolerant variety of maize. Before farmers can begin growing this maize, it must undergo any environmental and food safety assessments required by government regulators. The maize is also submitted for food safety approval in the markets where the grain is likely to be traded. This means that for globally traded products, food safety assessments will be repeated and confirmed numerous times. In fact, some popular products have been reviewed by more than 25 food safety authorities globally, all following international standards set forth by the Codex Plant Guidelines, the UN international guidelines for conducting food safety assessments. Going back to our maize example, after careful study and evaluation, the product is submitted for any required regulatory approvals in the countries where it is intended to be grown. Since maize often enters international trade, the product is also submitted for approval as food and feed in key import markets around the world. Assume that 2 years later, the product is approved for cultivation in several countries and for import into many others. This is good news. It means LLP will not cause trade disruptions when maize is traded between these countries. However, 2 remaining maize importing countries have not yet approved the specific GMO maize. What impact might this have on importers and consumers in these countries? The answer depends on how the respective countries manage situations of LLP. Since multiple food safety approvals are already granted for this particular GMO, Country A decides to adopt an LLP threshold policy. This means that small amounts of the drought-tolerant maize can enter the market, for instance, less than 5%. Alternatively, Country A's LLP policy could have allowed grain with LLP temporarily until their domestic approval is in place, or only for certain end uses. Country B, however, has no LLP policy. What happens now? When a vessel arrives at the port in Country B, maize is offloaded into bins, and the vessel continues on to its next destination. Without an LLP policy, what will Country B do if they become aware of LLP in this maize shipment? They may decide not to accept the grain, despite numerous assessments by global regulatory bodies assuring no safety concerns. But this poses a problem for the port. The grain cannot be reloaded onto the delivery vessel as it has already departed, and it cannot be loaded onto another ship and taken to a different market, since delivery ports are often one-way systems. For Country B without an LLP policy, manufacturers can experience supply delays or shortages, and ultimately, consumers have less choice and higher costs for food and goods. How could this have been prevented? Reducing the gaps in the timing of product approvals between countries is the best way to avoid trade disruptions. But when that isn't possible, transparent LLP policies are necessary to enable predictable trade, a reliable supply of commodities, and access to innovation for farmers and consumers around the world. LLP is not a safety issue. It is a market access issue that can cause years of delays in the introduction of beneficial new innovations, such as those that are needed to respond to climate change, meet global nutritional needs, and improve food security. It can also cost the agriculture sector millions of dollars. Well-thought-out LLP policies benefit seed companies, farmers, consumers, grain traders, importing countries, and exporting countries alike by creating an efficient and predictable trading system. With everyone doing their part, the value chain working to minimize LLP, and regulators working to reduce the time gaps in product approvals between importing and exporting countries, we can work together to eliminate unnecessary waste and make sure that grains needed for consumption and manufacturing find their way to market. For more information, please visit gabbit.org.